The Chargers were widely expected to be one of the best teams in the NFL this season. A lot of that was because of Justin Herbert, who is definitely one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league, but it was a lot more than that. The Chargers went out and traded for stud Khalil Mack and then signed one of the top free agents, J.C. Jackson. On top of that, the Chargers locked up some important names like Mike Williams and Derwin James. Despite being in an absolutely loaded AFC West, there were such high expectations for them, and they just haven't met them. Not even close, really. The Chargers just haven't looked good in their games. On paper, there's plenty of talent on this squad, but it just hasn't come together like Los Angeles probably would have hoped. The Texans are still winless and are, well, not one of the best teams in the league, to put it nicely. Well, to be honest, they kinda suck. The Chargers only managed to beat them by 10 in week 4, 34-24. The Chargers really need some confidence to go their way, and a dominant performance against a bad Houston team would have really helped. But that wasn't the case. Luckily, it was compared to week 3. It was the week after a big Justin Herbert injury, and we'll get into that in all the injuries really. But week 3 was just demoralizing for the Chargers. Against the Jags, they just got blown out. Trevor Lawrence dominated. He had 3 touchdowns and over 250 yards. James Robinson rushed for about 100 yards and a touchdown, and the Chargers just couldn't stop anyone. And it sure didn't help that Herbert wasn't playing too well. 55.5 completion percentage and 1 touchdown to an interception. LA didn't even try to run the ball because they were losing all game. Jacksonville won 38-10. It was honestly kind of embarrassing for a team with such high expectations. The best the Chargers have looked this year was in week 2, and even that was a loss. But to be fair, it was against the Chiefs. Herbert got hurt late, but they were already losing. Austin Eckler only had 2.8 yards per carry on 14 touches, which isn't great. Patrick Mahomes was great per usual, and the Chargers just couldn't stop the run and lost 27-24. The Chargers are 2-2. Their only other win came in their season opener over the Raiders. Herbert looked really good in the game. He had 279 yards and 3 touchdowns, and the Chargers won 24-19 in a close game. As we know now, the Raiders might not be that good, and the run game was horrible then too. Eckler had 2.6 yards per carry on 14 touches. There's just a lot of problems in Los Angeles. Most importantly, the injuries. Injuries have absolutely killed the Chargers so far this season. That week 3 loss was brutal, but you can 100% just blame that on injuries. Against the Chiefs, Herbert suffered a fracture to his rib cartilage, and it was hard to watch him late in that game. He did. There are so many more issues than that though. Keenan Allen has been the best player on the Chargers offense for years now, and he went down in week 1 with a hamstring injury, and we haven't seen him since. That's a tough pill to swallow on its own. Tight end Donald Parham has been dealing with a hamstring injury too, but the offensive line has really been where everything has fallen apart the most. Center Corey Linsley has been dealing with a knee injury, and tackle Rashawn Slater is probably going to miss the entire season with the torn bicep. But don't worry, because the defense has had plenty of issues on their own too. Cornerback J.C. Jackson had a just ridiculously odd injury. He had an extra bone in his ankle and had to have surgery to get it removed, and he's missed plenty of time. The one that does really hurt the most though is Joey Bosa. Everyone that's been watching LA for the last few seasons knows that it's been him and Derwin James as the heart and soul of the defense. Bosa suffered a bad groin injury, and that's going to cause him to miss 8 to 10 weeks. Another brutal loss. Maybe we pegged the Chargers as too good of a team before the season started. I get it, there was a lot of reason to be excited. I mean, Los Angeles went on a huge spending spree. The Chargers sent a 2nd and a 6th to the Bears for Khalil Mack. Los Angeles got a really good deal for him too. Mack had only played in 7 games after he suffered a foot injury, but still had 6 sacks in those games. J.C. Jackson was the other huge move. Nobody has snagged interceptions quite like J.C. has in the last few years. He had 8 picks last season, 1 year after he had 9. His rookie deal ended, and the Chargers ended up giving him a massive 5-year, $82 million contract. On top of that, Los Angeles gave two of its staples big multi-year extensions to keep them around. Derwin James got a much-deserved 4-year, $76.5 million extension, and Mike Williams got a 3-year, $60 million deal. The Chargers went out and got better, but it was still wishful thinking that they'd just all of a sudden be great. Los Angeles hasn't made the playoffs since 2018, and Justin Herbert just never has. Granted, he was really close at 9-8 in that wild game against the Raiders that they probably should have tied. Speaking of the Raiders, they've been disappointing as hell too. The AFC West, man, I don't even know what to say. It was hyped up to be the best division in football, and people were literally saying that every team in the division could make the playoffs, and that's certainly not going to be the case. Every single team has disappointed in some way. I mean, I'll give the Chiefs a pass. I think Kansas City is still one of the teams to beat, but they did lose to the Colts, which shocked a lot of people. The Broncos have been wildly disappointing. If you trade for Russell Wilson, you're expected to be able to at least hang, and as it turns out, Denver just isn't as good as we thought. Finally, the Raiders, who literally just got their first win of the season, and it came against the Broncos. Such high hopes for the AFC West, and nobody's really reached them. It's crazy how bad the division has been. Not that they've actually been bad, but expectations were so high for all of them, especially the Chargers. I feel like you just have to believe that the Chargers are going to find a way to turn things around and be good, right? Like, the roster is too good not to. Justin Herbert is where every conversation starts. He is so damn fun to watch and one hell of a player. Plus, he's got the weapons around him. Mike Williams has done a good job proving that he was worth all that money. Joshua Palmer is a great number 3, and Gerald Everett is a pretty good tight end. I think most of the Chargers' issues probably root back to the offensive line. It's well in the back half of the league, and there are even more issues now with injuries. That's been one of the big reasons why Austin Eckler has really struggled so much. The biggest thing, I think, is getting Keenan Allen. He's been one of the best wideouts in the league for a long time now, and LA has the talent to survive without him, but it's such a huge difference for that offense when he's on the field. On the other side of the ball, the defense has been pretty solid. They have some serious playmakers over there. Joey Bosa being hurt sucks, but they're fine. Khalil Mack already has 5 sacks in 4 games. Seems like he kinda has a pep in his step after that injury last season. He isn't the same player he was with the Raiders a while back, but he's still a beast. The Chargers pass rush has been one of the best in the league. 4th best, according to PFF actually. All the other rankings are pretty subpar, but there are reasons to be excited. JC Jackson coming back will be good for that secondary. Asante Samuel Jr. is opposite of him, and Derwin James is literally one of the best safeties in the pros, period. I know the perception is changing, but Brandon Staley can figure this out. The Chargers have a good excuse for their struggles so far, but I do still think that they have the talent to be good this year and make the playoffs at the very least.